Hey, how are you? I'm Tim Byrne. Now, this is the show, the podcast. It's going to be on in a few seconds. What a great show we have this Wednesday night. Okay, so I'm going to talk politics for 2 seconds because it's driving me a little crazy listening to all the radio ads. And by the way, I'm driving to Ottawa right now. I seem to follow my wife wherever she goes. I love her to death. Okay, so back to politics. Premier Ford here in Ontario. Ontario is $365 billion in debt and deficits of $12-14 billion a year, and just racking it up. I listen to all these radio commercials and TV commercials from unions and organized labor and government employees who are complaining about all the cuts Mr. Ford is making our government. I don't like any government, but I definitely don't like governments that spend money we don't have. Your newborn child today is $26,000 in debt the day they were born. And if you let government keep going the way they're going to burn cash. And I don't know what you think, but this money doesn't grow on trees. And we have no more money left. And the only thing left to do is cut. So if you got a government job and you got a great pension and you get to go home at 4 o'clock, you can't take any more money from the hard-working people. If you're making about $65,000 to $75,000 a year right now, you're paying almost 50% tax. And then you go to the grocery store, well, not the grocery store, you go to the mall, and you pay another 13%. So you're at about 63% tax right now. So when people tell me they want to tax the rich, which classifies as people that make 80 grand or more, I don't know how you can pay more than 63% of your paycheck to the government, and they are useless at spending money. All right, so that being said, the Cedar Centre, it actually gets a lot of government sponsorship. I wish it didn't have to. I think that you should be giving back your money as a taxpayer, and you decide where it goes. And if you were going to send your money anywhere, the Cedar Centre, who I interviewed their staff in their boardroom, and this is way outside my usual podcast. These folks take care of adults and children who were a victim of child abuse or had abusive behavior. And I've given money to these folks and participated with these folks for many, many years now. And they're rock star people. And I wish I didn't need any government funding. And if I had my tax dollar, I'd hand it to them. But at least I can tell you that they're doing a good job. And they're making sure kids don't get abused and used. So if you had a penny, so here's my rule. If you're under 16, I like to give you charity money. I'll sponsor a hockey team, a soccer team, a football team. If you're over 16, I'll give you a job in the back of the shop, sweeping the floor, so you can make money. I don't believe in giving charity to adults. I believe in giving charity to kids. Kids can't help themselves, but we can help the children. So I am Tim Byrne. This is Tim Byrne Almost Live, driving to Ottawa. You enjoy the show. And I'll see you in the backside. Hi, I'm Tim Byrne. This is Tim Byrne Almost Live. It's Wednesday night. I've done... well, in the last year, a lot of podcasts with corporations and associations. And funny enough, I got an email about a month ago, and I was asked to, the email said I was forgotten about. And said, would you like to come back and be part of our gala? I guess this is what it would be called. Hand-in-hand gala. The Hand-in-Hand Gala, and it's the Cedar Centre. So over the last 5-6 years, I was participating with you guys at your gala, moving Dr. Michael Irving's monument. And the truth is, the first time that I actually did it, and I left that kind of blank and okay, who's Dr. Michael Irving monument? The very first time I did it kind of on a whim. Mm-hmm. And I did it without knowing because somebody asked me for a favor. The Beswicks asked me for a favor, and I'm a guy that jumps in with 2 feet. And when somebody asks for help or a favor, I don't typically ask too many questions. And I go, "What do you need?" And I kind of make it happen. It's my modus operandi in life. Karma's a bitch, and it'll come back and bite you in the butt if you can't constantly say no. Anybody ever see that movie with Jim Carrey where he was told he had to say yes to everything?
right? Old movie, right? Yes to everything. I like to be that guy. I think positive energy comes from giving up positive energy. I think you go negative, you're going to get negative energy.
You didn't know what the ask was, though.
What? No.
You said yes before.
Yeah, I did say yes before. And that's probably my largest problem. Tell me, Feet in the Street, what do you guys actually do day to day for your community?
Well, we're a trauma center, but we're a very specific type of trauma center. So we provide intensive trauma specific services for children, as well as for youth and adults whose children experienced childhood sexual abuse. And more recently, we've expanded our mandate to include all forms of interpersonal violence. So any bad thing that one person can do to another person experienced in childhood. Does that sound fair to the nodding people around the table? Is that
actual therapeutic, or is that like?
It's therapy. We're a clinical environment. So the folks that are sitting around the table are all of the therapists that are involved in the work. So when you look at this organization and say, Allison, what a great job you're doing. I say, I keep the lights on like you do. Yeah. I pay the bills like you do, but you know who does the work. And these folks are the folks that do the work.
Do you guys, so everybody's in the room, I want you to just nod or shake your head. Do you guys all go to therapy on your own to get over your therapy? Like you're all therapists of some kind, right? So do you go to therapy? I love therapy, but do you guys go to therapy after? Sorry, so I want to disclose that so nobody has to go, I'm not saying a word. I mean, I love therapy. Do you guys go to therapy afterwards to manage your therapy? Because I would tell you that from what I know now after 5 years about you folks, and for my short spouts of being involved with you, I find it hard what you do. I mean, because a lot of what you do is accepting negative energy, and I'm an energy guy, so I believe they have to have a balance in negative, positive energy to make really great decisions in your life. You can't be euphoric because you make a stupid decision, and you can't be super negative because you make a stupid decision. So you're constantly in balance. But the problem is in our world is that, especially for you folks, people come and take your positive energy, hand you negative, and then, by the way, you have to trade it. You can't have one or the other. You can't have a lot of one. You're literally, as you have too much of something, you give it away. So if you have positive, negative in your hand and you're a ton of positive, people come in here and they download their negative and they're sucking away your positive energy. And then you have all this negative and you've got to get rid of it to get that balance back in your life. So I would assume that on a day-to-day basis, if you're seeing kids and adults, that it's got to be really hard on all of you guys. Is it really hard on you? My therapist tells me that it's really hard on him after a whole day of listening to everybody else's bullshit. I mean, and it must be hard, especially getting from, sorry, I don't want to sound callous, and I'm a big fan of child charities. So from a child's perspective, that's, if I was listening to a child in harm's way, I think I would, I don't know if I could do your job. I think I'd go kill people. I would. I think I'd have a really tough time with listening to people in those challenges. Who pays for most of the stuff here?
So $250,000 is in and around what we would need to be raising every year. And so we do that with
$250,000 or $750,000?
A quarter.
So $750,000 comes from the government of some kind, and $250,000 comes from fundraising.
And other funders. So we have, because the ministry names have changed, I'm going to do my best with this. So we have the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services provides funding for some of our violence against women programming, and some of our child abuse programming. And then we have money from the Central LIN, which is really Ministry of Health funding, provides funding
Central LIN. Okay, so call me
Central Local Health Integration Network. Okay. There are a number of them across the province of Ontario, and that's in a process of flux right now with the new government. So we're going to be going to local healthcare teams at some point. But for now, ultimately the money comes from the Ministry of Health. For it's coming through a line of adult mental health into our adult program, which is Brent's program. Brent is the coordinator of the adult program. And then we have also from the Ministry of Health, our children's mental health portfolio is being given to health this year. And so we will be receiving money for the children's programming for that as well.
How much of your stuff is child children programming versus adult programming? Because you said adult programming
it's about half and half. It's about
but the adult
half and
one's
half.
new, correct?
No, the adult program isn't new. I think we have evolved the adult program significantly over the last 10 years, I would say. Recognizing more, recognizing really the changes in the field of how to work with childhood experiences. We're looking now at trauma. We're looking at frameworks of working with folks like the triphasic model. We're looking at gold standard tools.
So what's the triphasic model? Okay, so
who wants to do the triphasic model?
Sorry.
It's not going to be me.
And I don't want to spend 20 minutes on that, but somebody give me the Coles note, which we're all of the age group of Coles note in your Sparks notes.
So the triphasic model of trauma therapy, it basically is a model that says there's 3 different phases to trauma therapy, or trauma recovery, actually. The first phase is safety and stabilization. So it's just helping the person to manage their emotions, manage their feelings, and also find safety and stabilization in their life. So for instance, if they're living on the streets, you're not going to want to start trauma therapy and have them start talking about the deep, dark things in there. You're going to want to help them to find a place to live and, a bite to eat, right? So this model kind of prioritizes what work needs to be done at what phase. So in safety stabilization, basically you're helping the person to kind of get ready to have that solid foundation to be able to do the work of the next phase, which is working through the traumatic memories, right? So that's the part that probably a lot of people think about when they hear trauma therapy, right? Talking about those, there's various models we can use, various treatment modalities. I'm trying to give you the short version.
I appreciate that.
Skipping over a lot of stuff.
And I have a very short attention span.
Okay, yeah, you're probably already bored, right?
And probably most of your...
He's on to phase 3.
I'm really on to phase 3. It's true.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's working through the traumatic memories through various therapies and treatments that we have. And then finally, phase 3 is, I've seen it called integration or reconnection. It's basically helping the person to figure out, okay, now that my trauma really feels like it's not like here anymore, like it's not the biggest thing in my life. It's in the background of my life. Who am I? What am I all about? What are my goals in my life, right? How am I supposed to live day to day now and get used to this new reality of not having the trauma be the major theme of my life anymore? So that's the model that Allison was referring to.
Yeah. All right. So Allison,
thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. Here, I'm going to dive down here for a couple of minutes because I want to know. My therapist told me that most of his, by the way, so I've had some wicked trauma in my life. My son was killed when he was 20 years old, and I was the one that pulled the plug on him after 21 days in intensive care. And I had to watch. Yeah,
That's
really. Whoa. Yeah, no, it's going to make me cry just talking about it. So, and I deal with it all the time, and I went to therapy for a really, really long time. And ironically, I went to therapy so long with my therapist that my therapist, after 9 years, became friends outside of therapy because he was 55 years old and I'm 52, and we just circumstances happened. We just
one ended and the other.
Yeah, it began right. Saying that, he said to me that most of his client care doesn't get a chance to go from cradle to grave. Most of them can't afford it, can't afford to be there, can't afford the time, can't afford the mental stress of it. And he gets them off the launch pad, and I'm trying to be generic so that the audience listening, he gets them out of the gate, around that first bend, and he basically has to pat them on the back and hope they make it to the other side. He's because he was with me for a long time. I went to therapy with him for 5 years. And I started just prior to my son dying because I was getting divorced and I really needed some help. And then my son died. My whole life ran amok, and I stayed with him for 5 years. And he said, I was the very first patient he got a chance to go from, funny enough, prior to a major trauma, through it, like in it and out of it, to the other side, that I can be healthy again. And accept all the shit I went through. Do you guys have a problem that you, and this is a work thing, do you guys sometimes feel like you don't get the accolades? Dave told me outright that one of his personal pleasures with dealing with me was going from cradle to grave, was seeing the other side of treatment, was knowing that I made it, because he said in 30 years of trauma therapy and marriage counseling and death, he typically doesn't get to see the other side.
Yeah.
He doesn't get to see the finish line. He doesn't get to see the health. Actually, Dave came 3 years ago. Oh my God, 3 years ago. Dave came to my wedding. Like, he was, when I asked him if he wanted to come, he was like, damn straight, because he doesn't get the chance. Do you guys feel like sometimes you're not satisfied with your jobs because you don't get to see the other side? Is there a moment in your hearts where you go, I wish I knew, I wonder what? Must happen all the time, right? Like every day, 6 months later, a year later, I wonder what? I wonder who, I wonder where they are, what happened to them.
Yeah. That's called, in our work, it's called ambiguous endings.
Ambiguous endings,
and
okay.
It's really quite common for therapists. It's common also for frontline responders. If you think about it, they're in the moment. We're in the moment. These folks are in the moment, kind of in those most difficult times. And if someone manages to work through an aspect of phase 3, that reintegration, that who am I, you see probably a little bit of newness of where I am and how I'm going to continue on with my life. But there will be folks that leave before phase 3, and we unfortunately have to put a limit on our time. And so often we will see people come back through. But the ambiguous endings, really, they're tough. They're really tough to hold and to work with, because these are big investments that these folks are making.
Emotional investments.
A full year with someone in a free community-based service. That's unheard to have that kind of intensity. We're very unique that way, but it still doesn't give enough time, I think, to see people through.
How do people find you? If I'm in trauma, how do I find you?
Well, they're going to find us through you.
Now they are. I got that right. But and you're right. So through free press and from people interviewing. But listen, when I was in the middle of everything that happened to me, I couldn't find anybody I fit with. So there was 2 problems I had as a person that was under trauma. One is there was a bunch of problems when you're under trauma. One is that you're under trauma. The other one is that you're looking for somebody to participate with you, and that person has to be very intimate. And a lot of times you don't get along with your first therapist because there has to be some kind of you have to be able to have an emotional connection. Oh my God, it's very much like selling. Right? You have to be vulnerable and have an emotional connection with this person. Yet it cannot be, for you guys, it can't be an emotional attachment. It can only be a connection. But here's
the thing. It affects so many people. So the joy for me in standing in front of a group of hundreds at the gala, or a good number at a golf tournament or any community event, like anything, anytime you get a chance to talk about it, 1 in 3 girls, depends on the research you're looking at, 4 to 6 boys before the age of 18 are going to be affected by interpersonal violence. More sexual violence actually are those stats. So when you think about that and you look at, so what does that mean when I walk into a mall? How many people here, really? When I look at a classroom photograph, how many people here, really? When I sit down at a dinner table,
1 in 3 girls.
Yeah, 1 in 4 to 6 boys. I think 1 in 6 is sort of the U.S.
boys,
number right now. Yeah. So
huge.
that's a lot of people. Whether people are talking about it or not, whether people feel that their life is currently being affected by it or not, that's just the reality of experience. And so we need to really get beyond the icky stuff, because it's more common than a lot of other things. So yes, we don't have a poster. We can't do a poster on it, but we do have our voices, right? Yes. And it's going to be the voices that are really, really important. And the more we learn about trauma, those voices are going to get absolutely critical, because we are looking at an epidemic of individuals who are suffering with mental health conditions that are probably deeply rooted in trauma experiences in childhood when you actually look at the incidence and prevalence rates. So we are connected to health and vitality in a way that is massive.
Whenever I do a lot of these political things now on my show, I interview weird, icky people that are in politics, and mayors and counselors and potential mayors, and I constantly, they bring up challenges like you have for funding and to make things happen. And I always refer to what you guys do in a very nice way. I'm about to get lynched. You're a big Band-Aid. And we're not actually solving the problem. Here's just a big, massive Band-Aid. You really are. By the way, the carbon tax you just put on gasoline, that's a big, massive Band-Aid. It's not the problem. And so when you look at things like the carbon tax, you look at stuff like you guys do. The real problem is way farther deeper in. When the Ontario government took away their sex education program this last year and pulled back, I was okay with that. What I think there's a problem, and the only thing in life that you don't need to get a certificate for is to be a parent. And I think somebody needs to turn around and go, okay, now your kid's hitting grade 1. You as a parent need to go get a certificate to figure out how to talk to your kid about sexuality. I don't think, by the way, because we have Catholics and Protestants and Muslims and Jewish and a mixed bag of everything in our school system, we are truly multicultural. I don't think the school board should homogenize sexuality and start telling my kid what they can and cannot or what is right or wrong. But me as a parent, with inside my traditional values can, yet a lot of parents don't know how to do it. And ironically, the largest investment of your life you need no training for, your children. I find this absolutely abstract. So I think somebody needs to stop and go, you're right, we don't need to spend the money with the teachers. And I don't want a teacher who has no care and concern for my child teaching my whether I'm a Hindu or Jewish, in my background, what I believe is right or wrong sexually. But I do think you as a parent should know how to talk to your kid and how to look for signs. Because from what I understand, last time I learned this, a lot of that abuse comes with internal close family, friends. It's all localized. And I, as a parent, need to be able to talk and communicate and look for signs. But I don't think anybody's taught me as a parent. And here's the funny thing. Parents get all, well, I'm the parent. I know better. No, you don't. And your kid's giving you all kinds of signs. And you need to stick your head above that. You need to stick your head above that foxhole. You need to stick, sorry, it's my line at the end of the show. You need to stick your head pull your head out of the sand and go, I need to be self-aware. And I need to be educated in how to deal with my child and how to deal with circumstances and things that go on. And I think I'll make you close shop in 20 years if I can get parents educated on how to find, how to see it, how to smell it, how to taste it, how to know it's there. Because I think a lot of parents are really, really busy, caught up staring at their phone. They don't know how to stop and look at their kid and have dinner and look at the signs and look whether they're looking at you in the eyes or whether they're looking at whatever the signs are. I think there's a lot of little things you go, listen, if you these are all the little finger pointers. I don't think anybody teaches any parents. I think parents go blind. The first kid's always the worst one, and if you have 3 or 4, by the time you get to the 4th one, you got it down pat. I have heard of children. You know, the first one, I was my son, which was my oldest, and I was very close to him when he passed away. But I said to him one time, we had a huge fight on the top of Mount St. Louis because he was complaining about his youngest sister, who was 9 years younger than him, that she gets everything, she does right. And I said, do you realize I didn't know how to parent when I had you? Right? And the only person giving me advice was Nan, who was buying you Easter cream eggs every 2 minutes. You know what I mean? So I think if you stopped and you actually educated parents along the way, I mean, physically turned and said, I need to educate you about how.
Educating parents is an important thing to do. But I think
you should almost do a school thing, you guys. No, like a school program where you go into schools and start talking about this.
We don't have funds for it. So there's a big pull for you. You want it? We'll go into the schools. We've got to make it happen. Because
you got to stop. Sorry, no offense. I want to stop the therapy and start the treatment. Like I want to find the cure.
You're dealing with a really unfortunate, probably the worst element of human nature, and human nature is not going to change very quickly. So we know we're going to be dealing with this for quite a while. But, I think keeping kids safe is a job for everybody. Like it's an everybody job. So it's got to be all hands on deck in the school, all hands on deck, and like everywhere you can get at it, it's got to get at it. And it's unfortunate. Yes, you will have circumstances where parents perhaps were not capable of parenting, not doing their best parenting, not whatever. But you will also have situations where parents were doing very vigilant parenting, very careful parenting, and these things still happen. So it's challenging.
I think self-awareness, though, is a huge issue. I think most people aren't self-aware. I really do. I believe that 90% of the population on the earth walks around executing their lives in unawareness. We have no idea that we transferred our negative energy onto somebody else who transferred on. When somebody gives you the finger down the highway, it's not because you cut them off. It's because somebody else shit on their parade an hour early and somebody else prior to that. Negative energy and positive energy is passed through the universe very, very simply. And I think most people go through life. Parents will get home at night at 6 o'clock at night and they've had a crappy day. They're ignoring their kid on their phone.
Therapy for everybody.
Well, or self-awareness for everybody. Self-awareness for everybody. I think it's to stop and go wide. When you're bitching about the weather, when you're bitching about your spouse, when you're bitching about the traffic, you got to actually ask yourself whether this is negative energy is being created by me or given to me. and where it came from. And this is also being self-aware so you can help your children figure that out too. Mm-hmm. So even if you got an extra $1 million, you get an extra $1 million. Somebody coughs up and says, here's a big check, make it happen. It's okay. We're almost done anyway. So somebody cuts you a check for $1 million. Does that get you out of your hole? Does that put you in the right place?
It allows us to do more, I think. And by the way, it would have to be $1 million regularly to do more, because things have to be sort of sustainable, right? So one thing that we're looking at that's quite exciting right now, we know the additions that we would have to make to the adult program in order to come close to serving the number of folks that we would need to serve. Oh, Catherine's lining up. She'd like to say something.
Oh, right on. I like that.
She's
a
gonna
newbie.
chime in. Is it going to be about, Catherine's from our child, youth, and family program, so I'll bet it's going to be about parenting.
It
is.
Here we
and
go.
I'm going down right now.
Your comments about the parents were so important. And one of the facets of our programming here is a caregiver program, which often is a biological parent, doesn't have to be, but whoever is the person for the youth or child that's been affected by trauma. And we offer a program which is largely informational and educational to help that person support their person in service and understand the implications of trauma and how that might affect the behaviors and emotions that they're seeing at home.
Yeah, and thinking about, I mean, I'll ask folks to put it out there, but how many people do you work with that have experienced interpersonal trauma from someone outside of their home versus kind of inside of their home? What do you see more? So, because it's often the caregivers, right? Yeah.
Or closer family members.
Yeah, caregivers are closer family members. So often in educating parents, sometimes it looks different because they're the offenders. They're the ones harming the children. Do you know what I'm saying?
You don't know to quit smoking until somebody says it gives you cancer. So as a parent, you need to be told what you're doing is wrong. Like you need to be told what's right and wrong.
Well, it's against the law. I think it's going to be pretty clear.
I got to tell you, though,
sure that's not good parenting.
and I appreciate it. But by the way, so is speeding, and we all did 115 kilometers an hour up the highway. And whether you're doing 101 kilometers or 130 kilometers up the 400 highway, it's still speeding in the eyes of our law. So abstractly, people like to self-medicate what they believe the law really is, rather than discussing a moral compass in which we should live in. Because we've all decided that 122 kilometers an hour is fine on the 400. Yet our laws tell us it's 100K. And everybody's okay to go, no, but it was only 10K over. So we have a tendency of migrating ourselves into a position where we can accept and have tolerance for smoking, for speeding. And sometimes those behaviors get, in for a penny, in for a pound. It broadens your scope of what you're willing to travel outside your moral compass. And Lord knows I've been outside mine on both sides of the spectrum. And you need to know when this is about being self-aware, and you need to know when you're outside them. So yes, you're right, it's against the law, but so is everything else we do in this world. It really is. Everything all of us have broken the law today. So here's the moral dilemma with the government and the amount of legislation they have. You put so much legislation on people to the point where they're always breaking the law. They don't actually know when they're breaking the moral compass of their own society. Because driving to the highway at 120K and going, that's okay with my car full of kids, is still breaking the law. If that's what we've governed as our society benchmark. But we've accepted that now. We have tolerance for doing 120K. So now we have tolerance for doing other icky things, right?
Yeah. And I think interpersonal childhood trauma, it's on a continuum. So I think if we were talking strictly about childhood sexual abuse, this would be a much more difficult conversation to have. I think talking about moral compass just is an appropriate conversation to have when it comes to sexual abuse, for example.
The problem is on the internet, you can Google stuff. You Google Barbie and you get wicked, icky shit.
Yeah.
So, even for porn is still 85% of the Google searches. And the problem is you go from adults doing consensual things to bad things. Mm-hmm. And again, it stretches our tolerance for what we're willing to accept as a society. So this goes back to that rather than trying to just say you broke the law or putting you in jail, we actually have to educate you on what a moral compass is, especially as the planet becomes overpopulated and that spectrum of what's inside your moral compass gets washed out with the sands of time. We allow erosion within inside our moral compass to happen every single day. That's the real, truly challenge we have. It's not no law, as my sister said as a Superior Court judge, a death penalty won't stop the people who are murdering other people. The people that perform those crimes, regardless of the law in front of them. because they've already crossed over that moral threshold.
And folks that are harming children are not.
They've already crossed the moral threshold.
Well, they've crossed.
They're done.
Crossed the threshold and just thinking about it. I think, but
Yes.
But when they're actually caught, we really do not respond as a society in a way that we should be.
Right.
In terms of punishment and continuing to keep kids safe by putting pretty serious restrictions on access to children, being around children, other things, and not just a term of punishment, but what life is going to look for offending individuals after.
Yeah, I mean, again, you go back to some kind of spectrum. People want equal. You don't want to be a hypocrite, so what they have a tendency of doing is put everybody in the same pool and making sure that everybody's measured by the same stick. And I think there's certain. Sorry, and I'm a total capitalist. I don't think there's the same stick for anybody. I think everybody needs to be measured on whatever crime they did at that moment. I believe that when somebody speeds at the highway, one person's allowed to do it, one person's not, and that's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. I remember rushing to the hospital for my son at 130K. If a cop pulled me over, I would have told him to fuck off. I'm going to the hospital as fast as I want. I don't care. So all of a sudden, I morally decided that it was okay to speed to the hospital. But so that's why everybody needs to be case by case. And you're right. So the problem is in our court system, we literally have written a book and said, you must follow inside these guidelines. And you're like, okay, there's no guidelines for this or that or, whatever we allow murders out. The life sentence in Canada is not a life sentence, right?
No.
You go to jail for 15 years and you're up for parole. That's not, and we call that life. When we people, they got a life sentence, but yeah, they're on parole in 5 years.
So
it's
really,
weird.
really concretely, when you look at incarceration terms for the crime of child abuse, so for childhood sexual abuse, by example, you might see a year. You
It's
might
weird.
see 2 years.
Yeah.
But then you've got 2, maybe 3. Like it would be very rare to see more than 4, I would think. Very rare, like probably 1 to 2 years. But then when you think about that, we're seeing those children and in their adulthood. So now you've got somebody who has been living with the effects of that event or those events or those experiences for 30, 40, 50 years. So they've got a 50-year life sentence. How does that work? So, it's to assess damages when a child, folks go to children are resilient very, very quickly. Children are resilient, but there are parts of the nervous system that are affected that are not going to recover because of general resiliency.
We
need children's champions. We need folks that will stand up and say this is not acceptable. Yeah. And if we can't make a dent at the front end, then we need to be there at the back end too. We need to be.
Well, I love you guys, and you guys all do a great job. And I need you to take care of the kids. Period. For me, it's the kids. I want everybody to take care of the kids. I don't want children getting hurt. I don't want them growing up with scars and things they can't control. I need them to feel healthy and safe. And the minute a kid doesn't, I personally get goosebumps and my throat starts to close over because I think those kids need to be taken care of. I am Tim Byrne. This is Tim Byrne Almost Live. I am your Wednesday night, May 4th, down in Aurora, Ontario. The website again, one more time, Allison.
www.cedarcentre.
And they can find out about the gala there, right?
.ca. Yeah.
They can register there for the gala. And they can do all that stuff.
I believe there's a link there for them. Yeah.
If not, they can make a telephone call.
They can make a telephone call. Actually, there is a designated website. Hand in hand gala.
handinhandgala.com.
Mm-hmm.
handinhandgala.com.
Mm-hmm.
We're not sold out yet. We need to get sold out. So we're going to shove this out next week for everybody. I'm Tim Byrne. This is Tim Byrne Almost Live. Do me all a favor. If you want to be a hero in life, you got to stick your head above that foxhole. You got to take a few risks in life before you're going to save any lives. You have a good night. Take care. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Hope you enjoyed the show. I like the Cedar Centre. I think they do good work. And on May 4th is their gala. I know it's in Ontario, and all you folks are listening from all over North America. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Give a little. Give a little to the kids. Find some, if you're under 16, figure out how to help them with your money or your time. I'm a big brother as well, by the way. I have a little brother. So either give money or time, and that's anybody under 16. Over 16, give them a job. Let them rake your leaves in your backyard or mow your lawn or sweep your shop floor. I really thank you for watching the show, and I know that one was a little twisted and a little off grid for property managers and general contractors. But maybe it's not. Philanthropy is really, really important, and it needs to be part of your life balance. I am Tim Byrne. This is Tim Byrne Almost Live, and helping a kid is sticking your head above that foxhole and becoming a hero. And somebody doesn't have to pat you on the back to let you know you are one. You just need to know you are. I need you to subscribe and thumbs up me and pass my podcast around. And I need some more people to interview. I like content. I like talking to weird and wonderful people that either are helping society or wrecking it one way or the other. It's fun to get everybody's opinions out there and how it affects and how it changes the destiny and the landscape of construction, property management, and business in general and government. So I am Tim Byrne, driving to Ottawa. Be safe on your Wednesday. Good night.